Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together business owners, leaders and experts to talk about their business journeys and provide them with invaluable insights and explore the link between personal and business success. I am your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve. I have previously founded, grown and successfully exited 3 businesses in the business services and technology sectors. I have a passion for helping and advising businesses and seeing them succeed. We all know that leading and running a business comes with its own unique joys and challenges, and Evolve provides the advice, guidance and support to the business, you and your teams on that journey, be that if you're starting, growing or looking to exit or step away from your business. We do this through our Ignite, Thrive and Optimize programs and services, which includes strategic advice, coaching and mentoring, leadership training, funded business support and so much more. If you want to learn more about Evolve, then please do go to evolveadvisory.co.uk or connect and message me on LinkedIn. For now though, let's just get on with the show. This week I'm talking to Mark Masters, marketing expert and founder of You Are The Media, a marketing, media training and learning community. What started out as a side project in 2013, the business and community has now grown into a name on an international scale, with people participating from all over the world. At the core of Mark and You Are The Media's strategy is community marketing, a trend that has experienced a significant shift in popularity in recent years. I therefore want to get Mark on the show to get his expertise on the topic of community building and how to create and strengthen a sense of community around a brand. As well as some key things around community, we also discuss the importance of being persistent and consistency, and a great phrase that during the course of the conversation Mark discusses is that business is socialising with purpose. Therefore, please do enjoy this episode. Welcome, Mark, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Lovely to be here, Warren. Thank you for asking me.
Really looking forward to our conversation. I love some of the opinions that you have around marketing and communities. Your regular blogs are always interesting and thought-provoking. So I thought it was about time we got you on the podcast.
Kind of, yeah.
And I suppose where we should start is, where did your own personal journey start in building the community and the business that is You Are Media?
Yeah. So it goes back to 2013. And can we start off with a rocky start?
Yeah, go for it.
He's in! So where You Are The Media started was from a tough place. The first newsletter was sent in October 2013, but it was off the back of a really tough time. I had clients that were going bust. I went too deep with clients. I was owing a lot of money.
And you're a traditional marketeer, really.
That side, advertising, marcoms, that's where the company was. And so I was in a bit of a pickle. It's not nice when you're sitting owing 50,000 pounds worth of bad debt. And I learned then that this importance to be resourceful over having resources. So when you've got nothing, that lets you exercise that creative muscle a bit more. So I thought, okay, let's do this, because I was spending money on things such as AdWords, spending money on SEO, you're spending money on Facebook ads, advertising. But as we all know, they're not bothered about a business. So I started a newsletter and I called it You Are The Media. And it was a way of me to share how I was looking at the world. Then it was more around marketing. It was generic, the difference between brand and a logo. And it was just generic stuff we can find everywhere. But I just kept going. And slowly people subscribed. And over the years, it's kind of helped build my confidence. And there's been milestones. 2016, I could see that there were subscribers from a local area. So we created a Steel Raymond, thanks to Lee Taylor there, said, why don't you do an event here? So we did our first lunchtime event. Okay. Then we created a conference that was called You Are The Media Conference in 2018. COVID hit, we learned how to make hybrid, and it's just grown, this manifestation.
It's had its own momentum, as it were.
Yeah, massively. But it's all around this thing of persistence and keeping with an idea. that's where it started. We're still going strong, much like what you're doing, the good work at Evolve. But it all comes today, it represents how we, small businesses, people, how we can be self-sufficient. When I say self-sufficient, how we can be self-sufficient promoting ourselves and our work.
Yeah.
It just so happens when you have a community alongside you, it doesn't feel as difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. So whilst we're reliant on an audience that we don't know to promote us, to stand by us, why can't we build relationships with each other so we rally behind each other?
Brilliant. And so look at that. So you are definitely, clearly, a really clear advocate that a small business, an SME, small business, can do a lot to promote itself rather than rely on the middlemen, agencies, marketeers, AdWords, all of those kind of things.
Massively. And do you know what it starts from? Or are you going to ask me another question?
No, I was going to ask you, where does it all start then?
The whole thing it revolves around is by having something that we believe in, having a value, or having something that people can associate with us that is not related to our business. So when I said it was in a difficult time, so when you're offering marketing services, you're building websites just the same as everybody else.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, similar to exactly what's going on with Evolve, how you can build around an idea. And the secret to it all is finding something that you know that you cannot stop. If I was just talking about marketing rhetoric, I would hit a cul-de-sac because there's far better places out there to find that, whether it's the CIM or whether you're going to other places from reputable places that are out there. But if you have an idea that people can rally behind or understand, that's how you build an audience.
And how does it differ, being part of the community, being sort of promoting your own business, to developing a personal brand, or are they one and the same thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So because it coincides. Because if there is something that you believe in, that's something that you stand for. And if you have a backstory that can associate with it, rather than you're trying to shoehorn something in. So for instance, if you step forward and say, we believe in customer service, well, so doesn't everybody else. If there is an association that is dear to your heart, or something that has happened that you can share that may resonate with other people, that's where the two-pronged attack comes in terms of our own personal brand, in terms of being seen that somebody respects, trusts, and also what we're building around this idea of an association that people can get on board, because that is what helps our narrative, So let's look at what we're doing here, with what you're doing here with around Evolve, and that's around kind of how we can stand on our own 2 feet, but how you show that to your audience of how that works. So that then brings them onto your side, and then comes back to you. But you don't mean that you show off because you're doing it in a way that, look at me, everybody. You're doing it because you believe in it and you do it with conviction.
And that's the slight nuance between those gurus that talk about developing a look at me personal brand and what you're talking about.
We do see that a lot today. And it can be hypnotic and it can be engulfing because we're living our lives via what somebody else has done. I understand it because if we can join 28,000 subscribers or come and join this, or we see heavy LinkedIn connections, which is fine. But do we really want to live a space where we're trying to be like somebody else? Whereas I've kind of gone for the approach that says, come and join us or it works like this.
Yeah. Okay. And one of those other things that just coming off that piece of conversation we just had that I think and again, you've written a great blog on it, is this kind of piece of an origin story. And that's fundamentally telling the story of where you've come from. Yeah.
I can never do it. And I always get upset. When I tell it, when you have this origin story of where it started for me. And maybe somebody's listening and will listen for in a couple of minutes. So all this thing started, right? This is when it comes to values, right? Values. That today you are the media and me represents this thing around creativity, around self-sufficiency, around community and around independence. Are you ready for this?
Yeah,
Can I
go
tell you
for
this?
it. Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to look you in the eye and tell this. Right. So me being a local lad from Poole, Oakdale Middle School, yeah? And when I was 11, we did a an election. Yeah. So 11-year-old, my manifesto was pretty flimsy as an 11-year-old. So we had our standard political parties that we represented. And there was one boy called Scott, and he represented the Let's Have Another Party, right? So he stood up. 11-year-old did that. So when it came to they were going through the votes. So when it came to me, I got one vote. And do you know who voted for me?
Your best friend.
Me. Scott. So one, it was humiliating. And I was in such a sad, dejected place as an 11-year-old because it was just me that voted for myself. But Scott and his Let's Have Another Party, it's a landslide. But that showed me then that that's what it represented. This was somebody that did something that was wholly independent, that didn't necessarily have to follow everything else. When I say that, it could be Google, Facebook, whatever we use. Think around being creative, this thing of stepping forward and being brave to do something. So that's kind of always lived with me, and I did it. And this is the bit that, because I got upset on stage when we had Creator Day last year, because it was that moment when I shared this story that I know that everyone in front of me was a part of the Let's Have Another Party.
Right.
See? And I'm talking to you now, and my voice is starting to go a little bit. But it was that, because you know that you'd built something then.
Yeah.
But, listen, it wasn't there as an act. It was there, it was that association to something that was the origin, that was the start of it. Honestly, Warren, this kind of stuck with me for years. That thing of isolation, that thing of loneliness, that thing of being laughed at. Isn't nice, but that kind of still stays with us when we're in work.
And therefore, when you then do create your tribe, your community, and have that around you, that becomes ultimately
massively
do
you know, and Warren, important. That's so powerful. But everything I'm talking about here is not anecdotal evidence. This all stuff is the stuff that's happening, and that's the joy of what we can do. So when you say from the beginning, can I just check mark, this is something that small businesses that we can do, that are fighting our own corners around creating something that's relevant for a group of people, not everyone, that people want to come on board with, because then it starts to go in these all manner of wonderful directions.
And so trying to put it in context for some of our listeners, have you got some of the stories of people that are part of the community?
Yeah, they've all been guests on here. So it's like I listen to your show. It's like you can come again, Mark. Good people that are part of the community, like Adam from Foundry. Another good one of my people that I love dearly is Gordon Fong.
Yeah,
Gordon was there, guest. And Gordon was there on that very first event we did in 2016. And this is an example. He is a case study in itself. Here is someone who was happy to be at the back of the room and then step forwards. So when it was ready for him, so in Christmas 2019, he shared his story. It was all about finding a place you can call home. And it just took him many years from where he lived to finally moving down into the home in Southbourne to finally feel at home. And honestly, it was then, it was this moment that we can step up and share. It just so happened that the platform was there for him. When I say that platform, this You Are the Media space. So there are many, many case studies of people that it's this idea of that we choose ourselves. Yeah, we start by choosing ourselves. Again, it goes back to school, Warren. It's like now we can hold the ball and we can pick our own team. And that's a real positive place to be. So rather than we spend our lives reliant on being chosen, which is what we do, we pamper to what else is out there. We keep on posting on LinkedIn. We try and kind of be mates with everyone else there with big influence. But what if we can find a way that we can choose ourselves more and then build from that? Yeah. Unfortunately, though, it's always about the quick wins. Let's do this short post.
We're building a community. I mean, I know that with Evolve doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Which is why we do see it a lot where people start with the best intentions, but it's probably the same when you start. When you started and you did an event, we have our best intentions. We want to fill the room out. We want it to be absolutely buzzing. But if we're being realistic, it isn't like that.
No, I can remember. So I think we kind of correlate in our thinking around building community around your business, and we did that with Inspire. That was the business and tax advisory firm. And I remember we started, and I think you probably used to attend from time to time because we had some mutual clients back in 2004, 5, 6. But we did our first business networking kind of event, and we always it wasn't really just networking, it was meaningful speaker with an audience, subject they could learn, take something away and apply in their business, not about finance and accounts. Anyway, tell this story because I had this idea that this is what we're going to do. And it was called the Inspire Business Forum. And we did our first event. And I got a great guy called Ian Foster from one of the local stationery and furniture companies to come and speak. And he did loads of prep. And we had an audience of 4 people for it. By the end, roll forward 2-3 years later, even, that long we were doing it for 10 years, we were getting 50, 60, 70 people turn up. But that first event, and I remember that feeling of, what are you doing?
Yeah, and it is that.
And it's that, but you've got to persevere, haven't you?
Yeah, but look, we did good events that were at the BIC and places like that. And the people that come to that.
Conferences with 200 odd people.
Look at me bigging you up as well.
Thank you.
So we but yeah, it's that. When we start, we have to accept. It's just a shame that we have to think that because we realise that nobody knows us. We're strangers to a lot of people. So when you kind of started that event, similar here. Do you know what? But the only thing that it hits us is our ego. Like I can remember cancelling events. And I took a screen grab at the Eventbrite. 6 people, whatever money had come in, they were reimbursed. But I kind of screen grabbed it. But this is the thing, like similar to your side. As long as we can talk about it and document it.
Yeah. And
it is pushing this boulder up a hill. But we realise that the longer that we're at it, what I've been basically doing is pushing this car up a hill on my own. And only in the past 18 or so months, lots of people are starting to help me push that car, and it's great.
So we'll come back to You Are the Media and some of your philosophies. So you've created your community, okay? What advice do you give to those that are part of your community in the very first steps, maybe, because those listening, about how they might create their own community that supports their own business? Yeah,
okay. It always starts with having a place that you can be vocal to an audience, yeah? Okay. So someone may say, well, I'm going to be more committed on LinkedIn. That's fine. So if somebody was saying, well, how can I do this? I can only talk from experience. The thing that has helped me has been a newsletter. Email to me is email addresses is my currency, yeah? So if somebody was starting, it would be find an idea, what we've just talked about, of around an idea that that you cannot stop and start a newsletter. People could say, why don't you do a LinkedIn newsletter? Well, you can. But then again, LinkedIn owns that database. Whereas if you can start a newsletter where people can leave their emails, over time you can find ways to reach out to that audience, yeah? I do have a newsletter on LinkedIn, but I don't necessarily know the stats. You can't see who opened, who clicked. You know that there is an audience. It's great. You can reach out to them. How can you find ways to pull an audience to your own space? That's my big advice for people that think, I'd like to have a go of this, is figure out how you can build your own owned space where people are prepared to leave their email so you can keep the conversation ongoing.
Okay, that's a great first step and first tip, isn't it? And in terms of the nature of that content, for something like a newsletter, and we all get quite a few sometimes, and there's quite a bland nature. I mean, how do you, advice again, somebody's going, right, okay, I get what Mark's saying, I can build my email kind of database, I can start sending out a newsletter. How do you make that newsletter stand out and work for you? Okay, so the way that I base what I do is around, one is my own reflections or what I am learning around this idea of self-sufficiency and what we're building and community. Because that's what you represent. Yeah. But how can we put our own stamp on it? So now we're in this world of ChatGPT, even better. So we can, you're right, the emails, the things we subscribe to, what purpose do they serve? So I know, so we're competing with if you're sending a newsletter, you're competing with everything out there, even whatever you're reading on the BBC. So how can we put a sense of personality, or here's another idea, if whatever industry that we have and you kind of think, well, I haven't got time to write this, how can we be a voice for our industry? For instance, whatever it is, recruitment, whatever, or maybe in the world of accountancy, how we can be a filter for the world that is out there and to share that.
So you've got one side, you can put your own stamp to give your perspective and knowledge of an industry. You're giving your knowledge freely.
Yeah.
Or another way could be that you share as a digest what is happening out in the big wide world. I see this. I think this is such a massive opportunity to be that voice piece for an industry, because you can highlight and find what is happening out there and share that with people. Or the third way is you can find a hybrid of both. I tend to do that. My newsletter is based on a perspective from me. Then I will share what's happening in the world of community, of creativity, and the sense of building and ownership, and I share what's happening. And then the kicker is, how can you then start to invite your community into what you're creating? Somebody from the community will always start the newsletter. It's called the You Are the Media takeover. It's never me starting the newsletter. It's always somebody else. But that somebody else, so it's one to validate, I'm a part of this too.
Yeah.
I do believe in people feeling a part of something, this idea of this label. I do believe in labels. And also by saying, this is me, come and connect with me on LinkedIn. And by the way, here is something I'm watching on telly. Here is a book I've read. Here's a podcast.
Yeah.
What you're starting to do now is that your audience start to help you with the creation process.
Yeah. Okay. And you start to bring personality
Yeah.
into it, don't you? And
Yeah.
testimony nearly inadvertently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. And where do you sit with, because a lot of what we've talked about in the 20 minutes or so far is quite traditional in a way. It's quite old school. It's a bit face-to-face events, things we believe in. It's perhaps a newsletter, which is, always done. Where do you sit with new technology and how, businesses, particularly SMEs, should be using things like ChatGPT and you've said about Facebook and all of those kind of things, but where's the space for technology and what you would advocate? Yeah,
it's how we use that's there on our shoulder, chipping away at us to help feed our curiosity. Because I now look at this, what you kind of highlighted there by saying, this is quite old school, isn't it? You're not kind of delivering stuff here that's kind of new world, whatever thinking. But the whole point is this, is that homemade is now a premium. Yeah? Writing, the skill of writing, the skill of sending something to somebody else. So it's easy, because I know if you get a newsletter from me that says, in today's digitally noisy world, it's got the ChatGPT little tick to it. But if there is, but is how we put an emphasis on the crafts the skill sets that we learn. There is even more emphasis on that. Facebook and all that stuff is brilliant because it's taught us how that we can rent scale. But then we could become reliant on it. Yeah, so we become reliant on it, and we see that like what's happened with the algorithm at the moment, and people's look at what their reach is down on what they would have seen a good few months ago, which puts the emphasis on what we can do. So the tech is there; it's great. The tech just helps us. And this comes back to the personal brand aspect we talked about earlier. But how can we put our own stamp on this media in these spaces? And as you're right. Going to an event, that's pretty old school.
Yeah.
But how can you flip that event to look at it a different way? Or how can you put something on an event that has your own stamp and perspective where you heighten what we've already got? So we're so lucky. This is the thing. We're so lucky to have all these things that we can do and we can use online and we can use offline. But it's how we can be creative with it and to reintroduce. Yeah. So we step into a networking event, a business event, and that's what we expect. But how can we start to flip that and throw new things in? And here's a good quote for you. And it dawned on me a few months ago. There's a lovely chap called Christoph Stoughton. And he says, business is socializing with purpose. And that's what it is.
Business is socializing with purpose.
Yeah. Okay. And it's this thing of that, now what's happening, this thing of being normal, of being a normal, I would say good person, but this thing of championing the simplicity of it all. Yeah? And that makes it even more now we know we can churn out, we got that company that sat there and did one blog every 6 months. Now there's a blog every day on their industry. Well, we all get found out eventually, which is why we're in such a good place how we can reinstate these, as you highlighted, traditional media that's there, but how we put our own slant to it.
Yeah. And another one that intrigues me is that, Evolve is scaling, regionally and hopefully nationally, but very much the businesses I've always run have been very Dorset, Hampshire.
Yeah.
So 2 county based.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that, to me, it's quite easy to build a community
Yeah.
and based on reputation and hosting great things or sending good content out, and people kind of start to gyrate to you. But there's a lot of SMEs in these day and ages that aren't just selling in the UK, they're selling worldwide. How difficult do you think it becomes to create a community if you're a kind of worldwide business?
It's not that difficult, because the great thing now, right, here we go. So it's about, again, people buying into an idea, right? Could be Peloton, for instance, whatever they've done as well of how they've built and got us all hooked in during COVID. You make that space, whatever it is, you make a space, right? So one of my fears was always that because we do events here that are based in Dorset, I don't want to be known as this Dorset company.
Dorset
and I know,
Mark.
and I know it happens. And listen, I know it happens, but the only reason I do it is I can experiment and I can test out. And I treat where I live as a playground to test out ideas, so we can share with the rest of the country. Look, it looks like this. When you're talking about then, we'll be talking about beyond the UK and overseas as well. Well, I realised this side as well, that how can you galvanise people and still bring them together? So a thing that's happened, that's, for instance, on this side, is that we created a community online. We created a membership space. So places like Mighty Networks or Circle, these membership communities that have grown in the past few years, we have built a membership space using Circle. So whether it's me or many other brands that are out there, how you can, and this is the thing that I love, Warren, is this ability now to take everything offline. When I say offline, away from the main spaces. And effectively, you're building dens in the woods with other people. So we created a membership space called You Are The Media Club, that people come together, that is online. But we can be open, we can be honest, we can share. We're not fighting to be heard as a Facebook group or anything else. This is a way. And this is the thing that really fascinates me now, is how we start to move things away from social platforms and how we build our own entities. But it's still online, and people come together and know where we are.
And online and worldwide,
yeah, we're still using,
or whatever it may be.
And that's why it's great of what's available to us today. I guess it was spearheaded since COVID, of how we can look at these other independent spaces, how we can find ways to bring people together. So these platforms that are out there, I think, are great.
Yeah, and is the challenge, though, that the Joe Public and us in business, we're so now used to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, that it's quite hard for these new platforms and these independent places to really gain traction?
Yeah, but I guess these other places went buddied up, found their allies with other people that have built big audiences. Yeah, so whether it is an entrepreneur on fire or somebody else that has built a big audience, so it's how you find your allies to bring those people as those people to test out and to share and to endorse. Again, it's building other people, building communities via using the strength of others. It's still, it takes time, but that's the beauty of it, of living our lives on platforms, because it's there. Yeah. And we might as well just keep on saying what we've always said, because that's what we've been told, and how we create these businessy personas, rather than how we can have a look what's out there, see what is of use. And the most important thing is as well is that there is a pulse to it. Because imagine if you create a place and it's quiet, or it's just, and I've been in spaces where it's the owner is very vocal and then goes quiet. So it's a dynamic to get used to.
That's quite an interesting topic in itself, isn't it, Mark? Is that question of how do you remain consistent? And because consistency is really important when you're building a community, isn't it?
Massively. It's how you find that pulse, or how you can still go when you're not up for it, whether your head's in a tough place. And I've always looked at it this way. This thing of consistency means, when I talk about a newsletter, so I have an unwritten contract with a subscriber. So I send a newsletter every Thursday morning around about 6 a.m. It starts with that. So I really appreciate it. Somebody leaves their email. I don't want to abuse it. I don't want to kind of spam someone or straight away upsell to someone. So when we talk about consistency, listen, it could be anyone. It could be somebody who's just starting and they've got 20, 40 subscribers. Consistency happens because you recognize you have a responsibility to others. And that's what starts to shift, because then you can ask people what they think, or if they come back with an email that says that was great, or this thing stirred my thinking. That's the thing that keeps us at the wheel, and that's the real privilege. So consistency comes down to the people that we serve, plus as well on this topic area that you find of interest. Because otherwise we're just doing it. I just want to say, when I said before, it was just marketing stuff.
Yeah.
But that was fine, but that's what everybody else does. And I don't want to be talking about things such as SEO or how I should be using my Google My Business pages and things such as that. I kind of want to experiment. I live in this live lab, and then I share with everybody how it all worked, good and bad. And it's over the years, it means that what has failed, you can look back on it and say it went this way, because when it works, we're always on about the success. We've always shown people how it worked.
Yeah.
Like what you said with the event that you did.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of people, but it's only by just keeping at the wheel. I just kept with it.
Yeah.
So that becomes a story in itself that you can look back on now. That it's
Definitely.
like, well, I started there and there was 4 people.
Yeah.
But that's where we've all got to start somewhere and accept that.
Definitely. And I'm going to, sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to take you back to that 11-year-old boy.
Go on.
And one of the things that obviously gave you through life was this sense of a little bit of insecurity and a sense of an imposter syndrome, maybe. And what advice have you got to somebody maybe starting a community, even sending out a newsletter and not feeling that they're worthy of doing that, and that kind of imposter syndrome kind of attitude which holds them back? Yeah.
And do you know what? That is a big thing. Because if you're creating, whatever it is, audio, you're having a podcast, or it's writing, or it's video, you do not know how that's going to be received by an audience. Is someone going to and that's the thing, no one's going to throw us under a bus. No one's going to call us out unless we are saying things that are contentious. So the only way that I got over that, if you kind of talk about insecurities and that sense of imposter syndrome, is when you start, you're creating for yourself, right? Because you are creating for yourself to build up your skill sets, confidence to create, and then that shifts to your audience. So the responsibility you have for your audience. When you're starting this is brand new, you're finding that writing, that creation muscle of whatever it is. So that in turn helps build your confidence. So you can express yourself more. All I ever do, I send a newsletter. I just want to be a better writer. I want to be a better writer and sharing thoughts with people. And then you realize, and it does start to trigger over time, that you start to recognize the audience that you are creating for. So let's bring in the businessy side now. So when you start to realize you create for your audience, you're creating value when people are receiving something. So, and then that's how you can introduce different aspects. And this is how we grow businesses. Yeah. So from my side, it was, we started to do events that people would come to, that become learning, that becomes membership as well. But it all comes from exercising and becoming skilled at a discipline that then becomes attractive to an audience. Seth Godin wrote a really good article back in 2009. It's called First 10. And the whole idea is that we create for 10 people, that 10 people will tell another group of people. And it's just a really nice place, if you're kind of talking here, this place of starting, and recognize that it can be difficult, is this thing of you start off with first 10 people. Okay. It just so happened that yours was 4.
Yeah, it was.
An inspiring.
I started with 4. Yeah. And around all of that kind of conversation, we've touched on events, and one of the things you've got your Creator Day coming up in April. You've got a reputation for holding fun, energetic events. What do you think we need to do as business people, organisations, SMEs to make our events stand out and make them authentic?
Yeah, it was. So everything we do still has a very serious side. There is that element of bringing fun, but it is deadly serious. When I say serious in terms of ideas, people can apply within their own businesses. People can build, or even just creating a space that feels safe, that people want to come, that people feel a part of. So we have to, there's so much out there, or there's so much choice. So we're always fighting. We're probably seeing that. Listen, honestly, we're seeing it now. As each year is progressing, people are going out more, making that commitment to go to events.
COVID
so it's happening. So we did a survey, right? And we said, what's the biggest thing that is holding you back from going to a business event? And this kind of struck with me. And it wasn't about numbers. It wasn't even about cost. It was about time. So we now know all of us have time back. So why should we go to something? Why do we need to go to something? So when we talk about we put on these events that, and I don't want someone listening to this for the first time thinking, it's just chaos what they do. It used to be, but it isn't now. It's just structured. But we were always competing with, that's the thing we're competing with, somebody else's time, the choices that somebody else has. Why do they need to go to,
and we're more akin to, or aware of our time and our value of our time post-COVID.
Yeah. Why do we need to go out when we know that we can finish work at 5 and we're done? And this is the thing, I do scratch my head that no, I don't scratch my head because I'm extremely grateful. So with the event that we've got happening at the Lighthouse in Poole, people are travelling down from around the country. So you know that you have to make that, there's a trade-off. Someone's leaving the boss, the wife, the husband, the partner. So there's that responsibility, not just for me, for all of us. Anyone that's putting on an event that has to be worthy of somebody's time. So that's, when people come to our events, we try and break world records and we'll eat Ferrero Rochers and all that stuff. But there is a reason, but the whole reason for that is that appreciation of someone's time stepping in that room. Because I want them to come back as well.
And that's a great principle to have. If to anybody listening that's thinking they are running events or thinking of running any sort of event, is that importance of taking somebody's time and how you're going to give them value for their time is a great approach, isn't it? I love that philosophy.
Yeah, it is, and it's the simplicity of it all, because this is how we build customer bases and how we appreciate. As I say that, when somebody subscribes to the newsletter, I'll send them a video. I do send an automated sequence, but at least I want to kind of show somebody for their time. Giving me their email, I will send them a personal email. I use a platform and I will say, thank you for subscribing. How do you find out? Get them to ask, encourage them to get back to me and ask them a question. But it's all these ways that we appreciate somebody's time, that we can make them feel settled, whether that's online or offline, that they think, I'm going to come back to this.
Okay. Coming towards the end of our conversation, but I've got so many more questions. One of the things that, again, is this mix, and I see you do it well, and I'd like to see your advice for others, between, you're very clearly, and I'm very passionate about the written word, you mentioned that quite a few times, but you do put video out regularly alongside the written word. What's your advice as to how that blend should work? Or does it depend per business, per industry?
Yeah, that's a good thing, because it's around about doing the minimum amount possible, but getting the maximum return. Let me share what I mean. So you said that, look, there's writing and there's video. So what I write can effectively be a script. So I send a newsletter every Thursday, but I thought, well, let me sum this up as a video. And I will put a link in the newsletter, a little GIF, that would be me waving my arms, getting animated. But this is me summing up today's story. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like your Jerry Springer, your B2B Springer. So I'm doing that. So I said, and so we don't need to think that this is overawing. Yeah. I haven't got time to create. I haven't got time. Well, I think, if you've done the work, how can you now break this down into multiple pieces of content that can be seen? So I will do a 1 minute, 1.5 minute little summary of what I've shared. But it's also a way of just repeating it back to myself, It's me. It's like a sense check to me. Does this sound right? Am I just talking absolute nonsense? So then that will be in the newsletter, and then how I can put that on other platforms. So that will go on to LinkedIn. So I will say, good morning on the news and the video. So I make sure that's on a Thursday morning around 7:30. But that's the advice for all of us. How you can have a central place, but how you can break that down. Whether that's tweets, whether that's posts, whether that is video, whether that is, I used to do it as a podcast as well. I used to read and again, sense check as well. And it used to be like a 10-minute or so podcast. They used to be at the end of the blog. I just saw that it wasn't getting listened to as much. So I stopped it. But we don't have to realize that we have to be spending hours and hours and hours and hours of creating all this stuff. Do it once, then break it down.
Yeah, repurpose.
Yeah, that's there you go.
There you are.
Give you your marketing head on.
But so your central piece is your newsletter, though, isn't it? and everything breaks down off of that.
Correct. So we have the newsletter. So it's almost if you have that funnel thing in your head. So the main entry for a lot of people, most people, is subscribing to a newsletter. Then we have events that are happening around that. We have a main event as well called Creator Day. And if people want to go further, we have our own membership space called the You Are the Media Club. So that's the commercial side. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So all this stuff is not just this altruistic hobby.
It has to have a commerciality to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. But people know. But as long as we do something that people can see the value that we're creating is going to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
I'd like people to know that, for instance, a newsletter, if I wasn't here, I'd like people to think that they would miss it.
I'm sure they would.
Oh, look at you backing me up.
Just, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received, Mark?
Okay. So, and it was so during COVID, and we had our shows, we had Zoom shows called You Are the Media, Online, Offline. And honestly, it was this gold. I really admire a Canadian chap called Mitch Joel. He has a podcast called Control, Alt, Delete. And he said it's never, I'm just kind of summarize it. It's never about the platform. It's never about the platform that you're publishing on. But it's always about finding something that you know that you cannot stop. That's why you're still here. That's why I'm still here. That's why I have this curiosity, like what you are. You're just your curiosity and how you can grow what you're doing with Evolve. Similar to this side, how I can find something. Well, I know I cannot stop. And isn't that and that's the thing, that thing of momentum, and that we're finding. And when you talk about we kind of have these blocks that are in front of us. Well, maybe maybe that audience isn't ready for it. Maybe what you're sharing is not kind of giving you that lift. As long as we can find that balance between how we make money, the values that we have, and that thing in the middle, right? So how can we find our values that align with our careers and our businesses, and how can we share that? Because there's a role it plays for other people. Then you find this persistence that you know that you can't stop.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And what's the one thing you're most proud of about the You Are the Media community?
That I guess that I made something with my own hands. Yeah, I probably don't promote it and shout about it enough. But one thing I'm the most proud about is I can talk about this. I can look you in the eyes and say I did this. Yeah. And the most proud thing is that, not just for me, for other people, is that we can build something from zero. Yeah?
Yeah.
Whether it is no one coming to your event, whether it is struggling to get people to subscribe, the most thing that I'm proud of is that I started from zero.
Brilliant.
And I'm not burnt out just yet.
Brilliant. Glad to hear you're not burnt out, because the next question is, where do you want your community to go?
Okay. The idea is how we can find more leaders. What I'm starting to do now is to step back a bit more. When I say step back, it doesn't need, and I wanted to test this out, and it does work. So when you make a community, if it's always one person at the front all the time, then it can be seen as somebody else's agenda.
That's kind of leaders and followers, rather than a community, isn't it?
Yeah. And so this thing of servant leadership is a big kind of principle of mine, as well as how you create and then you tee it up for other people. So what I want for the community is that there's this ready-made brand, there's this thing now called You Are the Media, and what we're seeing now is that you're handing that torch to other people. So whether it is hosting a live event, whether it could be the community that are on stage that will be sharing segments, or, as we're finding now, as that torch is handed to other people from around the UK, a lot of this is based on trust to deliver. We have events in Bristol and Bath, but the idea is how that can move to other towns and cities around the UK, but to people from the community. But my goal for the community is how that torch is handed to others, because that whole thing of being seen, visibility, posts, other people, skill sets that other people may have. So and this is my other thing as well, is that we can all take from the whale. Do you know what I mean? If somebody is there, then you've got other people backing them up and supporting them and rallying behind them. And that's That's what I want from the community going forwards.
Brilliant. That has true legacy then, doesn't it?
I think so. I think it does. Yeah, it does, because it's not about you.
Becomes self-sustaining, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's not just about you at the front, it's the people that are a part of it. Like, I want to keep things constant. I know that a lot of the time it's me, it is driven via myself. But I think that's how community develops, is when it's about the people that are a part of it, that want it to work, rather than the few. So strength is this thing of it becomes a collective journey rather than a passion or something that one person is just progressing with.
Great. And I always end with the same question, and you'll probably know what this question is. What's your definition of personal success? What does success mean for Mark?
So, do you know what? The only reason I do all this is to be with my family. I'm kind of, that's all. To me, success is knowing that I'm there for my family. That's all I've ever wanted. So it's just, whether it is my 2 girls that are growing up, or whatever that we're doing as a family, me and my wife, whatever. To me, success is knowing that you're there. And even when my kids get older, they knew that I was there as I'm getting older, or when they were younger. That to me is what success to me represents.
Brilliant. What a great person.
Thank you.
So, if people want to learn more about Mark, in particular, they want to engage with your community, You Are The Media, where can they go?
Thank you. Yeah, so come to youarethemedia.co.uk. There's the newsletter tab at the top. That's the best place to start there. Leave your email. I'm tearing myself up here now, because if you do leave your email, I've got to send everyone a little video with me.
Yeah.
So you'll get an email, so you'll get little emails, and also you'll get a video from me that says thank you for subscribing.
Brilliant, Mark. I've really enjoyed our conversation. We've got so much in common about the belief in community. I've loved hearing your perspective on it and seeking advice from you about community. So thank you for being a wonderful guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Bless you. Thank you, Warren.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. And don't forget, if you'd like to learn more about Evolve and the services we offer and how we can help you and your business confidently start, grow and exit, then please go to evolveadvisory.co.uk. Please also help and support this podcast by subscribing, liking and giving us a positive review on your favourite listening platform. Thanks for listening and see you next week.